As we head toward North Idaho, let me tell you that the Lucky Friday Silver Mine has been a flagship operation for Hecla for nearly half a century. The mine itself is actually more than 60 years old. The Lucky Friday is a good example of the difficulty of proving up reserves at an underground mine, even though the mine life may be very, very long. We've just come east on I-90 to the little town of Mullen, Idaho, and the Lucky Friday mine. You can see where the historic number 2 shaft is, which is what we still use for secondary access and ventilation, and what we call the new silver shaft, even though it's 20 years old. The silver shaft drops to a depth of over 6,000 feet, more than a mile under the surface. Where we're mining today is a function of another silver deposit nearby, ironically called the Gold Hunter. This vein was close to the Lucky Friday vein, and we have actually found the extension of that Gold Hunter vein 4,000 feet below the surface, about a mile north of the silver shaft. The old Gold Hunter mine was operated early in the 1900s. Prior to Hecla's acquisition of the Lucky Friday in 1958, it had been mined to a depth of 1,800 feet. In the following decades, we mined the Lucky Friday downward, using the number 2 shaft as the primary access until the early 80s, when the silver shaft was built. We continued to mine in the Lucky Friday vein until quite recently. In the 1990s, exploration drilling off of this 4050 drift showed the true potential of the expansion area, so we drove the 4900 level drift and began mining in the expansion area in 1997. We are now producing all of our silver from here. We eventually reached the extent of mining possible from the 4900 level. So, in 2004, we began driving another drift to the expansion area, 1,000 feet deeper on the 5,900 level. This allows us to access more silver over the next 8 to 10 years. It will lower our costs as well, and put us right in the middle of at least another 28 million ounces of silver ore. Of course, we believe there's much more to come after that. And if we know there's much more to come, why don't we show the full life of the mine on our books as proven and probable reserves? That's an issue that underground miners need to explain to investors. And I'll tackle it here, because Lucky Friday is a good example. Take a hypothetical surface deposit. It's relatively easy to put as many holes as you need from the surface to fully define the life of a surface mine. You can then put your 5 or 10 or 15 years worth of reserves on the books. It's a much more difficult prospect with a deep underground vein mine. Not only is it extremely expensive to drill holes that long from the surface, but you run the risk of missing a vein-style deposit altogether. It's much more practical to prove up your reserves from underground, replacing your reserves as you mine them. In the case of the Lucky Friday, rarely have they had more than 3 or 4 years worth of reserves at this 60-year-old mine. Instead, we've proved up reserves over the last half-century, just a few years before we actually mine them. With the drilling we've done in the expansion area, we can show you the potential and even the likelihood of this mine continuing on down to levels of 6,500, 7,000 feet and more. This is the drilling we've done, which has identified the resource so far. I'm confident future underground exploration drilling will show us extensive potential for the Lucky Friday. And that's why we expect this mine to continue to be a flagship for Hecla for years to come.